primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
in today's episode 236 of Podcast 2 for 1. YouTube.com/@241studios. It's the best place to consume all the content. If you didn't know, listeners, let's be honest, you probably did not. We are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Cole Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Daniel, after this, we have 5 episodes left before 2 for 1, before 2 for 1, or at 2 for 1.
Before our next evolution, yes.
Before our next cocoon evolution.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
It's
before
exciting.
then, it's pretty exciting. Before then, we are talking about the finale of Severance, and really just Severance season 2, and really probably the show as a whole. Now, it's always fascinating because, again, we had this group thread with Travis and you and myself. It's always fascinating when I think like how you're going to feel about one thing, and then you'll text or give a hint in the group chat of what to come. I'm like, man, sometimes I don't know where you're going to land or where I'm going to land on something.
Sure.
And so it was kind of interesting to see your initial baby thoughts. So tell me, what's your general overview of the finale and then the season 2 as a whole, and we can kind of go from there.
Sure. So the finale, I'll start there. I enjoyed it. It was a good episode. It had some really fun moments. The visuals were great. It had some surprises and some just, most of the time I was pretty glued to my seat, just kind of, waiting to see what's next. I found the kind of final moment of the finale, or just maybe how I guess I found out in the way that the finale resolved the questions that we had been asking this season, and the way it sidestepped others left me wanting. It's like I really feel like in some ways I enjoyed the ride so much more than the destination at the end of the day, and I think there's a few reasons for that. And let me just talk about the season as a whole. I think my biggest issue with this season is that it peaked halfway through. It peaked when Irving outed Helena as faking to be Heliar in the Ortbo, or the retreat episode. That, to me, at that point, the show hadn't missed a beat. It had nailed everything. It was answering questions confidently, like it knew exactly where it wanted to go. It was giving us mystery in a way that didn't feel confusing or stringing us along, that just felt natural. And I just feel like from that point, the season really struggled to find that momentum again. Like right after that, we did have a great episode with Mark and Gemma. It was beautifully done, beautifully shot, was a bit plot adjacent. We didn't get a lot of plot, and like sometimes those episodes are tricky to do, especially in a plot heavy show like Severance, and they did it really well. Unfortunately, right after that, we got the Cobell episode, which just felt like a complete they misstepped how they presented that story. And then to me, the final 2 episodes of the finale, it felt like less confident storytelling. It felt more like they were making it up as they went, that they didn't actually have thought through answers for why everything the way that Lumen is. Like season 1, everything that we see that Lumen does feels so purposeful, feels so connected to the theme of the show, feels so like, it just even just the weird shit, like Dylan going down for that weird like Roman sex dance, you know what I mean, at the end of season 1, because he's like, completed his goal or whatever. That's weird and out there, but it also feels so Lumen to who we've known at that point. It's just like, of course Lumen would have these weird employee prizes for good work that like are oddly sexual and like cultic and whatever. Like that makes sense to them, and like you can see even like a logic of like, yeah, it makes sense why they're just creating this own world where they are creating reward systems that don't match up to our world because they can control everything. And it feels like even just psychologically, like it's continued manipulation. And then you get to the end of this season where there's like a fucking marching band and like, hey, I love drum lines and marching bands, but like you're telling me there's a whole department for like one day a year, or like, right? Like that just feels like, okay, that's a fun idea that actually doesn't feel like it has much logic and plot behind it of like, oh, that's crazy, Lumen being Lumen, but it's not like, oh yeah, that I can absolutely see the corporate, logic that's going there, and I know exactly where they're going with that. And so it's just little things like that. And there's a few other examples that we can dig into that just it feel like up to that Irving episode. How I felt about this show and the writers is that they knew exactly where they wanted to go. They had the ending planned out. They knew exactly how it all came together, and they were just taking on this beautiful little journey to get there. And then by the end of the season, I feel like, okay, I don't actually know. Maybe they have an idea of where it ends up, but I don't actually know how much they planned it out. And and it just
Do you
they're making
remember
a
what
lot
I
of
told
sense.
you at the beginning of this season? I said, I don't think they know it. I think they might have some maybe broad strokes, but I think they're making up as they go. That's what I told you.
Yeah, and honestly, they were able to hide it really well. Season 1 did not feel that way, right? Season 1 felt like it knew exactly where it was going. All of the like plots intersected perfectly to this perfect finale, and it just felt so tight and so whoa. This one to
Well,
me, it just felt like,
it's got a
well,
little
here's
bit of
half answers to
sequelitis.
things we've been asking all season. Here's half answers to integration, reintegration. Here's these things. And then here's a bunch of other questions and mysteries that I honestly, half of them I don't care about because they don't actually feel important anymore. Like some of the mysteries, some of the questions they're bringing up about Lumen feel like they're never going to answer it. And that's on purpose. And that's where it starts to feel like lost. And I'm like, okay. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
sorry,
this is
that was
the
a big long rant. I want
no,
to hear
it's
your
no,
stuff.
no, I'm glad you said it all. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, I just said a second ago, it's a little bit of sequelitis, like one of the things about you got your first movie. Typically, if people enjoy it's done well, it's typically compact. It's got a very
Yeah.
straightforward narrative. It feels like it's telling a complete story. It hopefully knows where it's going. And sequel two or season two,
Mm-hmm.
they typically want to go bigger. They want to lean into some of
Yeah.
the things that people were enjoying about the first season. And the danger of that is you can have a marching band at the end of your last episode,
Right.
and you can just start doing things just to kind of throw people off and make the mystery bigger. And
Yes.
there some that the room for that, some of that can be okay. And you also have different camps of audience members. Now, Johnny Brannon, who has just started watching the whole show
Yeah.
this week, he's a good friend of mine. I know you know him
Mm-hmm.
pretty well too. And it's I know this show is built for him because
Mm.
he's very David Lynchian. He does not
Yeah.
need to know all the answers. He does not need to know if the spinning top wobbles or not at the end of
Sure.
Inception. I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I want to know why there are um, bear cookies or whatever in Lost, whatever those cookies
Right.
were they were eating, or
Yeah.
whatever the hell that was, those salmon
Yeah.
cookies, whatever it was. I need to know why that's there.
Right.
I need to know what the smoke monster is. I need to know why there's a marching band, or
Yeah.
why they're doing what they're doing. And so there's this, you're trying to service two different camps here. And when you do that, it gets unruly. And you got to
Yeah.
kind of pick your lane. You got to say, okay, you got to really go into, I'm going to serve Johnny Brandon, or I'm going to serve Donovan Thompson. And you're going to make one camp mad, but you're going to walk out with a more complete vision.
Maybe. I do feel like, I mean,
Not
like,
not mad, I should say, but like you're going to, I mean, again, look at Lost. How many
yes.
people
Okay.
walked
But
away with that thinking I needed all the answers? It was just kind of the answers.
sure.
It's also a little unfair because some of the answers were unsatisfying,
Yes.
right? Which is a component of it. But I'm saying
Yes.
there's some people, there's like the average
Yeah.
goer really wants answers. They get frustrated by it. Other people can see more of the art and the symbolism, and they're not as frustrated about them. They more care about the journey.
Sure.
And so, and you know what I'm saying? And so, like,
And I hear that. I think, and this is to a degree, I'm being unfair to Severance because I'm comparing it to what I consider the Mount Rushmore of like television stories. And I think you're right. It is very hard to do both. The best shows do, though. The best shows are 100% on the themes and the emotion, and the plot is 100. I mean, Breaking Bad is my go-to example. The emotion hits every time. The plot is always keeping you on your toes. It's always
yeah, but it's also
giving you
very, it's
breadcrumbs
hard,
that
it's
you
hard
don't
to
realize are
compare
till
those
later.
two. They're very different shows.
Listen, I'm
You
not
know,
saying it's not harder
while
to do with Severance in terms of what they're all doing. I also think it's possible though.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that it's a little unfair to compare it to Breaking Bad, which is the GOAT. I agree with you, greatest
Sure.
of all time.
Or
I got sucked
even
in
Better
like
Call Saul or The Sopranos
also the
or The
second
Wire.
GOAT or the equal GOAT, Better Call
Right,
Saul.
right. Like
Hey,
I get, you're
2 weeks
right. These
ago, I
are,
got sucked into watching just random clips of Breaking Bad.
oh man,
Every single scene is amazing.
it
And so
is.
I was just watching random clips. I'm like, this show is breathtaking. That sidebar,
Yeah,
my point here is this is the I'm not saying I'm not giving them excuses. I'm
yeah,
saying this is the danger of when you make
yeah,
these kind of shows. This is what I said at the beginning of the season. This is my
yeah,
fear at the end of season one. I'm like, they really have, I said this earlier this year, they have to stick the landing.
yeah.
And I always knew season two is not the landing. It is the middle
Sure,
point, or it is it's one of the boards of the sky, the diving and the swimming pool before the final splash. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
sure.
really not,
That we
it's
know
not
of.
the
We
end.
don't know if season three's the end. I mean, this could be a six season show.
I know. I'm saying it's
Yeah,
it's one of the stopping points,
sure,
right? And
sure,
so
sure.
I was frustrated because it's season one, even though it was a great episode of television, I was like, God, I gotta wait, however long. I didn't know it was gonna be 3 years.
But
But I
but
was
that's that's the kind you want to be left leaving. You want to be left leaving wanting more. Like every time a good show always is set. Like I want a seventh season of Breaking Bad, even though I know it would be horrible for the world and the narrative of it. It would degrade it. You know what I mean? But
I'm not so
yeah, I
sure.
kind of
They've
still
nailed
want it.
everything. They've
Uh,
nailed everything. So I'm not sure.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
but
but you know what I
but
mean.
my point is, I wanted closure then, and so I'm okay not having all the answers. Right now, there's a stronger chance than not when the show does end, season three, I hope, or season four or five, whatever. Surely someone will be past that. I'm really hoping that my instinct is like they're not gonna give us all the answers. They're gonna botch something, whatever, just because it's so hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that I'm like, okay, there's things that happen in season two that they kind of answer in season three and beyond, and we don't
Yeah, but
feel that way. It's just hard to judge it right now because,
I mean,
and
it is, but to me, it's like this. This to me is a, at least in
well,
my opinion, this is a definite stumble. The show did to
well,
me.
we're
This
being
was
very
not
broad. I want to hear some specifics. What
sure.
bothered you to like? What's answers like? I
Number
need answers to
one,
this now.
reintegration. We
Sure.
had three different episodes this season that ended in a cliffhanger of, oh no, the reintegration's really happening now. Like three different episodes where you got these amazing edits of like all the stuff. And then by the end, it's like, oh, actually, none of it really matters unless you finish it. And that's not been brought up before. And it just feels like that whole plot was made to get the audience excited and not like have a satisfying conclusion. If we're getting like it just feels like every time Mark has gotten reintegrated, it didn't really matter. None of the scenes where he chose to do it or she did it to him, or it's like in the end, well, he wasn't integrated. I guess it doesn't really work unless you finish it. That to me is just underbaked. Like that's just an unsatisfying way to handle that. If we're not going to reintegrate him when we're doing all that, then save it for next season. It doesn't need to be
I
here.
I
You
think
know,
it would
it's
have
just,
been stronger if they had started in the back half of the season versus the opening of the season. I agree with you. Again,
absolutely.
I'm not really defending
I
this
know.
show. I agree with you.
I
I agree
enjoy
with
the
you
debate. I'm not being offended.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not I agree with you for the most part, so I agree with you
So
on that. I think it should have
that
started
there.
later. I do think I love their conversation
Oh yeah.
with the
The
camera. I thought that
conversation
was
between the two Marks was probably the highlight of the finale.
the
It's
way
probably
it devolved. You're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is great. Like that's what you want to see in those kind of things where it feels like
it
you're
is.
winning, and then it just starts. I told Kim, I said, oh, this shit's fixing to go bad pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I think too, it's like, okay, so reintegration that was just a plot
sure.
device that did not actually feel real in the
It
world.
was dangling. It was dangling a carrot too early, and like it wasn't paying off quick enough
No, for
for
what they were acting like it was.
yeah.
They kept
But the
treating it like this. Oh my gosh, this everything's going to change now, and nothing ever changed. In fact, nothing ever will change until they do something else, and that just
question.
is like weak.
It's also I think reintegration is also different than what I thought it was going to be. Maybe I kind of thought. I guess I thought there was going to be like a plot point with a reintegrated Mark going into having the
Yeah.
ability to go into Lumen.
Well,
Um,
and that
and maybe it still will be. I don't know.
well,
But
listen, I do also think I think they really muddied the waters with their themes, to be honest, at the end of the season. Where to me, the theme of season one, like what is Mark scouts, Mark Audi, O Mark, as Reddit calls him, or I Mark. What is O Mark's journey? To me, this is all about trauma and running from pain, right? Like that was the whole essence of why he severed. Like that's what we knew Mark to be. And so the natural conclusion to me of Mark O's total arc is accepting dealing with Gemma's death and thus becoming unsevered. Right? Like that's like this, it felt like this show is talking about compartmentalization. And yes, it's talking about it in the context of work-life balance. And that's so interesting. But this show's really about pain and how we deal with it and what it, and like even the whole theme of like the innies are still feeling the pain of their outies. They just don't know what to call it. It's just this like formless feelings that they have, and they have no way to identify or even address it because they don't have the memories that gave them those, but they're still feeling everything that their outie feels. You know what I mean? And so to me, it was like this
but
clear.
we kind of knew at the end of season one that the narrative that plot point would obviously change some because, or at least we thought we did, with the introduction that Miss Casey is his wife, right? So we knew,
Sure.
and like I still think that's there. I feel like in a way, but now it's been like, it's kind of been flipped where now it feels like the innie,
Well, I'll
it's
tell
like
you,
them learning to love and learning to,
yeah, and I think
their fear of
well,
loss,
it's like this
fighting.
question of like, and I've seen this debate a lot on. I mean, like I will say, like here's a great example of how the show stumbled a little bit. The conversation has changed online. It was earlier, it was like Severance can do no wrong, and now we're just getting a pretty even divide of how people feel about it. It seems there's a lot more people just being like, what about this? What about that? And not having good answers for it. I will say that, shit, I just lost it. What were we just talking about right before that?
We're talking about
the themes,
theme of season one.
Sorry. Okay. Like, so if like a lot of the debate has been about like, what is this show about? Like, is the point of this show that Annie Mark and Outie Mark are like, I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, this is about how they're really just two different people. And somehow like the best version of the show is they somehow equally get to exist equally. And to me, it's like, no, that's antithetical to what this show's journey was at the beginning, which was Mark S.'s wife died. He didn't know how to deal with it. So he cut off a part of his brain to hide from it. And now we're like, we're starting to dig into like, I think even, let's just get into the final decision. Annie Mark's decision to run off with Helly at the end. Yes, it made emotional sense in that he did not want to go do what he perceived as dying. It makes absolutely no logical sense. It's like, and to me, it's like, I just kind of wanted, but like, honestly, if we had one more scene where instead of freeze framing on them running, they said, what are we doing? And he said, I don't know, we'll figure it out. That would have helped. Like to me, just to even get a little piece of their psyche, it just to me, it felt like,
well, we know
this is a dramatic turn in order to string along the narrative. Not that I think it's like, it felt like a moment that just pushed the narrative along and made it longer rather than it being a logical choice that the characters have been leading up to that makes sense. And listen, some people think it makes sense that he would do that. I feel like it would make sense for him to run down the hall and then stop after 10 seconds. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Where am I going? There's no, what is their possibility for life to live out forever on the severed floor and never leave? Like,
I don't think they're thinking that far. I think this.
Yeah. And I think that's a little
problem. No. This is a perfect example of, you care about somebody so much, you'll do anything to spend 10 more seconds with them. You're not thinking about after those 10 seconds, you're thinking about those 10 seconds. And so
sure.
I think,
and maybe, but again,
that's a very romantic idea that I'm totally
it is,
cool
but that
with.
does not feel like what's happening. It feels like they are running off to find a way to survive.
Well,
like it does.
If
that was the point, they would have run around the corner. He would have spent 30 more seconds with her and gone out the door. Like to me, it's like the way they position the finale. It felt like, okay, yeah, okay. Emotionally, I understand how Mark, Mark
I think it's
got here, but it was not a satisfying. It did not feel like, oh, I completely understand why the character would do this. Yes, I emotionally know why he would want to do this, why he would feel like doing it, but I don't understand why he thinks it's a good idea. Or
I don't know if he does think it's a good
logical
idea.
Yeah,
I think that conversation with Annie and Outie Mark, I think that totally teed up that moment.
It does.
again, I think I'm totally in disagreement with you on that one. I mean, again, this is something that will be answered in the first 5 minutes of season
Maybe.
three. That will, I mean, I totally see episode one. Not Mark's not even in it or her. I can totally see that too. That
Yeah.
version of that season kind of opening.
Yeah.
But I mean, the show had to go. The show we knew the show was going to go on, right? We knew
Yeah.
that there's a version of this where Mark outing or any Mark went out and then they miss Casey and then went out and then there's like a black cut and then you see a scene where they're like happily together and that's like they did it, kind of thing
You're
or
right,
whatever.
but
It could have
you're right.
ended,
Like that's the end. That's the final season. But to me, it's like
but it
I
could be the
agree.
end
The
of the
show
show,
had to
but
go on. I just think they could have done it better. I just think they could have set up
maybe.
like to me, it feels like the conflict is now. It's kind of based on melodrama. To me, it's like why the reason I really can't get into so many shows that are like written on some channels is because the plot happens because of emotion. That's the only reason. Because this guy didn't want to talk to him, because this guy didn't feel like being honest with him in this scene. Now this whole plot's happening for the whole season. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like
I get what you're
so to me
saying.
it's like
I don't think
here's
this is the
how to
same
fix
thing
it.
as that.
Easy way to fix it. Give them a reason to feel like they have a chance. We could have had one scene earlier in the episode before saying, hey, we found this new Lumen technology that like fucking, I don't know, lets you do shit. Like give me like that would have fixed it all. If they said, hey, and it's like,
amazing
Helly's
that
like, what if we did
that
this? And they're like, oh, it's a rumor. There's no way that would work, but we got to try. Like that to me is like so much better than just like, I'm just going to change my mind at the last second.
Where we end up on road sometimes. It's incredible. I just don't, and not, I'm glad we're different this way. That it's just like, I could not think of like how we're going to be on separate sides sometimes. But I just, I don't think I don't,
everything you're saying isn't wrong, and that you had to do this, they had to do that. I agree. I think they could have done it a lot better. I just
sure, I
think they
think
could
it's
have done it
okay
better.
because
And
I was
and to
emotional
me,
by it,
I have
and I
not
think
been able
that
to say
serves.
that. I have not been able to say about that show to this point. I have not been able to say I get what they were doing, but they could have done it better. That has not
I
been
have
possible, and now I
I
can't.
have other issues with season two. To me, I'm like this is an easy thing that can be fixed or not even fixed. I'm okay with the way it ended. I think it could be supported in the way you're thinking about in another episode or two. I'm not, as I know there's going to be more. I'm not worried about that.
Sure,
I'm more worried about things like we have a 7-minute marching band sequence. Like
I
that's what
agree.
I'm worried about. Like,
I agree.
and I think to me the emotion at the end was strong enough, and also just the execution of we have Audi Mark going
Yeah,
in, any Mark, and then he's Audi Mark. So like like they literally like Miss Casey and
yeah,
Annie, and then Gemma and Audi. It's
that
like
was good.
they all get to meet each other in
Yeah,
every permutation
yeah,
in that sequence, which is really cool. You know what
it
I'm saying?
is.
And
It's
so
great.
like that, I mean, and I'm more concerned about like, okay, what does this mean? They're trying to get, 24 or whatever it is, innies, 25
Well,
innies.
and there's just some things that don't make sense. Like, okay, we're led to believe this season that Mark S was the only one they actually cared about in that group because they fired them all and gave him new ones and it didn't matter. Except we know from like the screens that the other people were finding Emma too. They were all working on files of doors she went in too. So that even just felt like, okay, well, if they were working on Gemma too, why is it so important that Mark does it?
They were working on, I don't know if I caught that. They're working on Gemma
So
also?
these are details that are not like spelled out, but when you see Irv and Dylan and these people working on their computers, they're working on the other files besides Cold Harbor that are the doors that Jim is walking through at the bottom down there. So it's seeming like they're refining her too, just with different rooms.
Well, here's also an interesting thing that supports the problem with that is that Cold Harbor. I saw this like on the baby crib on the box in the flashback scene. Cold Harbor is on that box, so it's like
Oh yeah,
it's the baby crib. She's at the very end. She's unbuilding the baby crib, right? So like
yeah,
that. So that feels to me like that's tied to Gemma and to Mark,
yes,
and they shouldn't be dealing with that. As in the other Annie should not be dealing with that.
right.
So that
Yeah,
supports what you're talking about. But
and I
also,
think
it's again like this is the problem with this shit is that when you start getting super weird and you never know too of like they put something on the screen and then some
yeah.
visual effects guy. They don't know what's going to bite on the ass
Well,
later.
the comments I've seen though, we did not anticipate people paying so much attention, and
I
I'm like,
mean,
well, I can tell that,
well,
and here's to me, it's just like all of these issues didn't really start becoming apparent till the second half of the season. And that to me is telling. The fact that up to the point of Irv revealing Helena, they hadn't missed a beat. They hadn't done anything that gave me any pause narratively, any pause acting wise, any pause. It all felt so, again, purposeful. It felt like Lumen was doing things on purpose. And I agree. It just feels like some of the things they threw in, like even the whole goats thing. There's a whole department raising goats to sacrifice one every one. How often do they sacrifice? Like, there's just certain things
she said how many times we have to keep doing this, implying they've done this a lot.
Sure. There's things are like, but why do the people have to dress up as animals to be around the goats? Like, there's some things that are like,
this is the
that's
shit
weird.
that we were discussing in season 1. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's again, this is the problem of sequelitis where they have to go bigger and go deeper into some things. And
But
the problem with
season one,
I'm not
always-
defending it.
You're right.
I'm saying the problem is this is the outcome when you kind of push things too far sometimes.
I agree. And I think that's where I come at is they went too far on some things. They didn't think some things through enough.
Yeah, I agree with
and
that.
they came up with some ideas that just felt like cool in the moment without a lot of logic narrative behind it. And I
Maybe
think
we'll get
at the end of the day, like Lumen as a company feels so much different to me at the end of the season than they did at the end of season 1. Like Lumen now just kind of feels more like mustachy, twirly bad guy. Like you just never know what they're going to do. There's this big bad company. Lumen in season 1 felt like this really interesting examination of corporate culture, that everything they did felt like a mirror to something that happens in real life in a way.
well, and a cult. I mean, which is
Yes, which
and
again
they've
is
literally
alluding to
leaned into
that
that.
many work cultures or cults or function like them.
Sure.
But I get to me, it's like it just feels like I think at the end of the day, I think my biggest problems are I don't feel like they narratively motivated some of the character decisions strongly enough that I felt satisfied that they made that decision. Hey, I know I'm just one person, but to me, and I think the frustrating thing, it's like with so many movies you watch, it's an easy fix. You just need like one scene and you're done. That's it. You know, think of another technology that Lumen came up with, and it fixes it. Like it's that simple. And then to me, at the end of the day, it's like
before
they
you're recording,
cheapened
sometimes
Lumen.
you don't have one scene. Again, I know they reshoots and
You know, that's
sometimes
it. I'm very interested in what the changes were.
yeah, me
Reshoots.
too.
Like I'm
It's
part
so
of like,
weird we have
were
this
all
in
the
Daredevil.
reshoots like the weird ass shit? Like did they just be like, this isn't scintillating enough? We got to throw some more curveballs in there.
No, my impression is that they really reworked the plot. Like it was
Okay.
like there's probably an alternative season 2 out there. But
Sure.
more so than a bigger change than how Daredevil was changed, which is funny again that we're having this conversation
Yeah.
at the same time about both of them.
And
But
I want to go back to say is Severance is a great show. I'm going to be there day 1 for season 3. I'm not
I still
out.
think it's a contender for one of the best of all time.
For me, it would have to land so hard in the finale that it makes me forget about these mistakes. And I don't, at this point, I don't know if this writing team can do that. This season has shaken my faith in their ability to land it perfectly. And so, yes, you're right. If they just fucking nail it, and it's just like all the problems I had, they found a way to come back and make them not issue whatever. I hope so. At this point, I'm not anticipating it doing that.
Well, the benefit of TV and Marvel Studios also had this benefit is that it's a continuing story, and then when they start seeing the errors stack up,
Sure.
they had the ability to Infinity War them, where they make you feel like Thor: The Dark World's a little bit
They
better
do.
than it was.
They do. But to
know,
me, it's like, and again, it's like, it will, if they land the ending so hard that I forget about that mostly, that's great. But to me, the best shows don't have to do that. And that's just where it is. It's like the best shows that have come on TV never had to deal with that. And you're right. The genres are different, and it was much easier to make an action plot show about a science teacher making meth than it is about this crazy sci-fi world. I get it. I'm not saying that they didn't have a harder time, but at the end of the day, they didn't execute as well for me.
When I say greatest of all time, I don't mean like my Mount Rushmore. There's no version already where this show I'm going to like this show better than Lost, and that was determined in the first season of Severance.
I could if it
There's
didn't
no version I did. The acting is probably maybe on par or better than Lost. The cinematography is definitely better.
Oh my God.
I mean, like there's so many
production
things
value is
better.
insane.
It's so much better than Lost, right? But Lost, this is where it starts getting subjective. Lost did something for me that this show is has not done and it will not do. And you know
Mm,
what I'm saying, like, so so you know
sure.
what I'm saying, I think it might be the conversation when people in the future talking about this is one of the greatest shows of all time. You know,
Yes.
I might not agree with that. I think it will be part of the conversation if they can do a decent enough stake of the landing. My fear this whole time, the last 3 years since it started again, is there's gonna be too many answers, too many questions, not enough answers, and
Yep.
will the end justify the means? I'm a happy kind of guy. I need like a positive ending. I'm
Hmm.
not sure this is a positive
Oh no,
show.
no, no, no. Gemma's not going to live. I think that's I think the
Really?
obvious
Wow.
the ending will be that they reintegrate, but Gemma will have to die again in order for that to happen. And so to me that is Mark's full arc. He has to actually accept his wife's death. His wife is not dead. He doesn't have to do that. To me, that's a weak arc. It's like that just is a really strange arc for a character to go on. No, he needs to be able to accept the pain and trauma that he went through.
Well,
And
it is
it needs to
interesting
happen.
that
I
you've
mean, honestly, she needs to sacrifice herself or something. It has to be this moment where the only way for them to save the day, get all the shit, stop Loom, whatever it is that Gemma has to die and then Mark has to truly reintegrate, and he has to deal with it. Like to me,
well,
that's the ending. If
it's
they do it
also
right,
it's interesting too that you consider Audi Mark the protagonist and not any Mark, or you know what I'm saying,
they're the
like,
same person.
and
They're the same person.
I
It's
I
like
I understand that,
that's a debate I've been having. You know, it's
and
like
I understand that, and I also I remember the conversations where I agreed with you, and I think I proposed the show has to be them reintegrate. The happy version
yes,
is they reintegrate. The real happy
yes,
version is like, you feel like they're both there in some way, like
yeah, and
it's a
I think they will do that.
complete healing of the trauma. But I think now that we've seen season two, there is a argument to be made that the showrunner, the writer, whatever, he will prioritize one or the other
Yeah,
and not do
and I think,
reintegration.
and here's again, I think that just undermines whatever themes they had going on in the beginning of pain and trauma. To me, it's like we're just getting off into this plot, which is interesting, of like two different marks, but that has just disconnected us from what I felt like the show was trying to talk about in the beginning. And I think to me, and I've seen this debate, like a lot of people are like, no, any mark is a totally unique person. I'm like, guys, I just don't think that's possible. For one, to me, this feels a lot like multiple personality disorder. And so what you'll find with people that have that is that most of the time they were
We're also
kids.
arguing about a sci-fi TV show.
You're
I
right,
mean,
but like the
God,
reason I think I connected to it so hard is because it felt so analogous to real world societal issues
sure.
and things. But most of the time when multiple personality comes about, it's because someone is experiencing extreme trauma at a very young age, and their brain creates a new personality to hide the real one. It is literally defense mechanism. Here's a new
Sure.
person that can endure all this trauma, and I'm not here. I didn't experience that. Like it's a glitch. The brain is breaking at that point. It's not doing a good thing, but it's trying
Yeah.
to help, right? And so to me, it's like that's what happened with Mark. And to me, it's like even the people saying, "Well, any Mark's his own person." No, because if any Mark was truly his own person, he would have woken up not knowing how to speak English or having any context for anything real. He would have been a baby in a man's body, and for 2 years he would be a 2-year-old now. You know, like that would be a unique person. No, everything he is based on everything that Mark is up to that point in life. Everything that he believes in, how he feels, is based on who Mark is, and that has nothing to do with what he does at work. And so to me, it's like, yeah, and I think that's the beautiful tragedy. Like, this show can do it perfectly. We can have this beautiful story where they feel so different that we're afraid that Mark won't be his whole self. Like, there's this perfect way to do it where it breaks your heart for the right thing to happen.
Two. Season one is them kind of figuring out what's going on. Season two now is both sides making an argument. It's your internal side fighting, fighting itself. That's what the season two is.
It is. I
mean,
agree.
that's what happens.
Listen, I'm happy they did it. I just, again, I think they executed it in a less than perfect way. That's all it is. I just think they could have supported what they did much better. And I'll say this, like, I'll just one more, just little gripe. I still don't really know what the point of Cold Harbor is. Like, I don't know. It seems to be that Gemma went to Lumen for like fertility, and then they kidnapped her and faked her car crash and are using her to perfect a chip, I guess. But
I guess what they say it was like, if you're doing this for Mark or whatever. or something.
Yeah, they were telling her that, and I don't even know what that means. Like it like to me, it's like I would have liked to have a better, clear understanding of why this all started in the first place. And I think we're at the point in the story where that would have we could use that.
I want to move on after this really quick because
Yeah.
there's something I want to say before we leave that bothered me. But I agree with you. I think that the story has lost some of its interestingness when they're tying it
Yes.
so much to Gemma and like
Yes.
Gemma and Mark together. It was a cool wrinkle that Gemma also worked there, but I
Yes.
don't like the idea that the files are tied to Gemma making more. To
It
me,
just
I was more.
yeah.
Yeah, and it still may be we're trying to make more innies. I still think there's something about the like it's about immortality. Like
I think you're right.
it's Kier trying to live on inside multiple
Yes.
innies inside of one host body, and Helena's the next vessel, so to
And
speak.
and it doesn't even explain was she actually going to die the moment she disassembled the crib? Like it's like there's just
It's
certain
not they were going to
things
kill. It's not they were going to kill her after Mark completed, or you know, what I'm saying like they were going to
like
kill
with
her.
the goat. Is that the sacrifice? Like is that what it was?
I don't know. I mean, I think they were. I mean, the thing was they're seeing if it took, if the programming, or whatever, the algorithm took, and she is a true Indian. She has no connection to the crib and losing her baby, so she's not thinking about it. She has she's a perfect Innie, so to speak, right?
Mm.
I do think it's funny about this up. This is really quick sidebar. I don't want to go into it, but the perfect version of Lumen's program is when the any is come into existence, it is a zero baby. Like it is
Yeah.
a baby and they grow it from the beginning. That's a spinoff Severance show.
Right. Yeah.
And then
That's a
like there's like
prequel. That's what that was the
a
early versions
prequel.
of the chips.
Well, it can't be. I was like, that's a better version that have complete control over that any then.
Yeah.
And it's the true version of it. But you need to start young though. You can't start too late in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
My problem with the show, I know why they did it to kind of free up some space for the finale, even though I think they could have easily.
Mhm.
I say free up the space finale. They created the finale. They could have rewrote it. But I
Yes.
want to. I was more interested in all season, more in Irving's story than I was
Yes.
anything else. And for me, I'm like, I just had this suspicion, or I thought that Irving was like a someone in the FBI or CIA,
Yes.
and he's investigating Lumen, and that kind of
Yes.
dissolved, and it's become now he's on the train, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming that Christopher Walken's character is still working for Lumen, and
It
and
seemed
he's
to be
like,
the
hey,
indication. Yeah.
get on the train, so I'm giving you a free out so that I
Like
don't
I should
kill
be
you.
killing you right now, but I'm not. Get on the train or I'll have to almost kind of thing.
Yeah, and so like it's
And,
super
what it felt
unclear.
like, in season one, there was like a very clear path these characters were going on, and it almost felt like everyone loved the relationship so much they decided to just make it a cute little relationship story. And I hope not. Like I hope next season he comes back and this was all a part of the plan. Like it just kind of felt like it took the
Surely
interestingness
he'll be
out of
back,
Irvin a
hopefully.
bit, right? Like it just and that was the frustrating thing. He had the best moment of the season. I still think he is the emotional climax of this whole thing. No moment hit harder than drowning Helly. That was just and the yelling at Milchick. That was the moment that I got more chills than any point. Like it was just so good. Yeah, and then it just felt like he petered out after that, which was sad. But
Well, I think also like having the tunnel or the dark hallway, it to tie into Jimmy's thing at the end. I was like, this is why does he even know about this, or why does this tie into
it's just
Irving's
the elevator
memory?
down to her level, I guess.
I guess, but to me, it felt like something Irving had visited before. He had been in any
Yeah.
previously or something, and
Yeah.
it was tied, or he was investigating on the outside, and so he was remembering it, vice or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. And so like now I'm like, oh, that it kind of did mystify that a little bit for me, and made Irving's paintings less
Well,
important.
yes, agreed. And it just even Dylan this season was on his own little journey that just felt kind of separate from everything, and it was good. I liked the scenes with him, his like any version with his wife. I thought that was an interesting conflict. I'm glad they went there and dealt with that, but it also feels like he's not relevant to the central plot of the show almost anymore.
No.
You know, and that sucks. I like Dylan. I want him. Like I liked him. I think I saw some complaints. Like I liked the group. Yes, Mark S and Helly, they're great. But I liked Irv and Dylan. Like the group was the dynamic that I really enjoyed in season 1 too. And it just kind of feels like that's gone now, and that's a little disappointing.
It'd be hard to get it back considering where the characters are now.
Like it'll come back for like the final 2 episodes when they all team up to finish Lumen off. Like that's the only version where it comes back, and then it's
Do you
like
think
this
we'll
like
get that kind of
callback.
closure with this show? Do you think we'll actually get Lumen exposed?
I
Or
think Lumen will be destroyed, but the tragedy will be the death of any Mark and any Helena. Like that'll be the tragedy, but Lumen will ultimately be foiled. That's my anticipation. I think that's the best version where we get an ending that we want with a tinge of heartbreak that makes it compelling.
man, man, oh man,
Mm.
it is sad thinking about any Mark dying.
It is, and that's beautiful. Like again,
But it's
use
also
it.
he's not
Use
dying.
it.
I mean, he is and he's
Kill it.
not.
Exactly. And that's like you have
I
so
get it.
much room
I
to
get
just
it.
wax poetical about all that. Like
Wax poetical.
it's
Yeah, I agree.
like that's the goal that the show needs to be investing in, that ending. And I hope they do.
I
And
still
I think that,
overall,
like you said, it almost feels like this show could end where they try to give everyone a happy ending almost, and it could be really unsatisfying. And I think, like you said, that to me, you're right. The benefit of a TV show is that they hear the feedback and they can make changes to fix it. The negative is they can hear the feedback and get the wrong message and make the wrong changes, and then take the show in a direction no one was really interested in.
I'm not in the Reddit threads like you are. I just don't like Reddit. But everything I'm seeing is kind of the opposite. Everyone's like, "This is a masterpiece," blah blah blah. And I don't know.
The articles I'm seeing, yes, it's just we're in the forums and the discussion. It feels much more split.
Yeah, I just don't know, and so I'm curious to see. I'm just very curious, So like
Yeah.
this kind of show, it does enough high level things, and I'm still enjoying it that I want to know what happens.
Yes.
But as I've always thought, this show could break me at
Well,
any point,
And
so
I
I'm
think
waiting.
too, like there's a danger in that too, in that like this show categorically succeeded for Apple TV. I mean, this was another show that just put them. Oh, Apple TV's a player; they make good shit. This is their flagship at this point. And
It
so,
is, weirdly.
at an executive level, they may know this is perfect. You didn't do anything wrong. Do it again. You know what I mean? And so I just
Do more.
exactly. You know what I mean? So
Go
I guess
weirder.
I'm just like I'm worried that
Oh, yeah.
that the guts you have to tell really compelling stories that stick with you may be getting drowned out by the desire to appease all the fans. And that's
Hey, I've been afraid of this idea since Lost, and
what's
I
funny
like
is
I like
I
the
feel
end
like
of
we
Lost.
crossed paths at the beginning of this season. The first few episodes, I was like, "This is perfect. They're not doing anything wrong. This could be the best show of all time." And you were in that camp of like, "I don't know, I don't really know." And now it feels like we kind of crossed paths, and I'm like,
I
"Shit, I don't know what they know
I
anymore."
still don't know. The show's missteps have been what I've always thought could happen.
Sure.
You know
You're
what I'm
right.
saying?
They,
It's like,
they were the missteps that were predictable. And maybe that's the frustrating part too.
Yeah,
Is that it's going down some of the same old issues that shows like this have done before.
let's real quick spend 30 seconds on this and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
When are we going to stop having bottle episodes that have nothing to do with the plot?
Oh my God.
Because I will say this, one glaring issue of this
Oh my
season,
God.
I could have done without it, is the
No
fucking
one,
Miss Cobell
I don't think
episode.
anyone's debating that episode just totally
It's like,
it just stopped any momentum the show
Why?
had at that point.
it's like, what are you doing?
Yes.
And it's like, we can talk about next week.
And
Daredevil kind of doing a similar thing. I just don't get this trend, and maybe I don't get
I
it.
think Daredevil did it way better. But
Well, it 100% did, but the sentiment's the idea.
I agree. And I think even the answers we got on that episode felt like we're getting more questions than answers. And I don't know if you know all the answers to these questions. Like, is she a daughter of?
Cares? And who cares? That's my question.
Exactly. Like, I don't know why. I mean, I guess like she's a great actress and her character's great. And I get wanting to keep her a part of the narrative because she's just she has just this presence, and the way she speaks, she's really good. But I agree. It just felt like the idea that this was all her idea to begin with just kind of just feels. Why wouldn't she be like a fucking executive then? Why is she just like a manager?
That kind of also it? Like, I got some of that where
She came up with the original designs of the Severance chip. That was what we got. And part of it's like, is she a scientist? Because she seems like a manager. You know what I mean? Like, so there's just things like that just feel like, okay, I guess that can work, but like, is that really the most interesting version of this? Anyway.
Yeah, it was,
and even like there's just little things in that conversation with with Miss Cobell and Mark and is like in the snow and they're like, what is Cold Harbour? Like, and there was just moments where it just felt like the show was just like, now let's spend 10 seconds with the characters just staring at each other in silence, waiting on one of them to answer. And then they were like, tell us already. And you're just kind of like, it was just little stuff like that that just felt.
You know, this could have been what's interesting about, and we'll talk about it next week. We'll wrap it up literally. That episode of the bottle episode for Daredevil, that was the only episode that was not touched in the reshoots. Like that was not touched. It was a separate, they saw it and said, okay, this works independently. We're going to leave it. We won't touch a single thing about it. This also could be that same thing as Severance.
Yeah.
And maybe Miss Cobell had more to do earlier draft, so to speak, and they for some reason didn't see the issues with it.
And you're right. And I just think at the end of the day, it almost felt like they tried to make her too important by the end. Oh no, she's not just the manager that knew how to run she's the reason this company exists. And that just felt a little bit
fine. It would have been fine if there was way more information given.
Yes.
And it wasn't so slow and just
it felt like it was set
up.
up earlier. If she was in season 1, like talking with the people in the room with the monitors about how the chips are they could have set that up like, oh yeah, she like knows this science. She's not just like the person managing the people, but it just felt like she's just a manager. She knows how to manage people. She knows how to answer emails and be in meetings. And then it's like, oh no. She's a brilliant scientist that came up with this when she's like 20, I guess, timeline wise. And
even if it was a rich information episode, I just think it's never a smart idea to not show your protagonist in the episode.
And here's the issue too.
Make it be a B plot.
It was a rich information episode that was 37 minutes long and only 20 minutes of it was the information. Like, you know what I mean? Like it had a lot of information, but it also felt like we don't need 2 minutes of her laying on a bed crying into a breathing tube. Like we didn't need that much.
It's a B plot. It's a B plot, and you have them doing something else.
And it just felt straight. It felt like we don't want this episode to feel like 30 minutes when the rest of them are an hour. So let's just hang on these shots a little longer.
Well, Daredevil was shorter, right? But they were smart enough to tag it with 2 episodes that week to make you feel like it's which is
that would have honestly they should have done that. Should have given us that one in the penultimate, and then just save the finale for the next week. Yeah,
100%. That would have helped a lot. 100%. Yep. All right, Daniel, how can listeners write into us?
Listeners, write into bit.ly/241mail and let us know what you think of Severance Season 2. This was a really fun one to debate because I felt like we were able to really discuss things that don't necessarily have a definitive right or wrong. You can totally understand the viewpoints of either people on the side of the issue, but still I think there's just a lot of meat to talk about. And I want to know what you think. We want to know what you think of season 2 of Severance. Do you feel like it's still as strong as ever? You know, we're still riding the high of everything season 1 is, and this was just as consistent? Or did you maybe feel some of the stumbles like we did? Let us know. bit.ly/241mail.
And if you can't hit us up at our Bitly, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/@241studios. It's the best place to consume all the content we have there. It was super fun talking to you about this. Again, this is I never know where we're going to meet up or disagree or
those are my favorite movies and TV shows to talk about, where it generates interesting discussion. And I want to give Severance again. I like Severance. I liked season 2. It's still one of the best things, at least this year, that's been on TV. It could still very well be the best season of TV we get this year. But and I think again, that's almost like you're right. Like season 1 was almost too perfect. It just like can they ever measure up to being that tightly constructed? I don't know.
There's not that many Terminator 2s out there or Toy Story 2s.
I mean, honestly,
Godfather 2s.
Sounds like we should have had James Cameron instead of Ben Stiller for this season.
Yeah. So. Well, again, you have to have the want to stay the same, or the need to stay the same, but the want to change.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's how you do a sequel. So anyway, my name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.